Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And when it comes to assessing anything from Marvel Studios, I try to use an appropriate standard. Because, like it or not, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a unique entity compared to other media. It's not just that every effort to replicate its success has failed or fallen short. There's just never been anything else like it. In the history of movies and TV, it really is unprecedented in terms of scope, scale, and narrative. As such, you just can't judge it the same way you would judge any other media product. And being an admitted fan of the MCU and a lifelong fan of all things Marvel, I try to maintain a balanced perspective in that regard. But when it comes to assessing She-Hulk, I needed a very different kind of perspective. But I mean that in the best possible way. Now, I've been following this show since it started airing on Disney+. And yes, I've followed some of the controversy, and I use that term loosely, that this show has garnered. Now on that front, I'll just say that asshole grifters were always going to find a way to whine about this show, and their methods were just a lot more pathetic than usual in this case. But beyond that asinine yet unavoidable backdrop, I feel like I'm ready to give my full review of this show now that the final episode has aired. And looking back on the show in its totality, I can safely say that She-Hulk was unlike anything we've ever seen from Marvel Studios. This was a show that could have taken many different forms. And that's to be expected because She-Hulk herself has taken many different forms in the comics over the years. She could have easily been a generic legacy character who emerged alongside Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. Marvel Studios could have also tried to completely reinvent her in a novel way, like they did with the Mandarin, Namor, or the TVA. And that could have totally worked. Marvel Studios does have a track record of making it work. But instead, they went with a very specific approach. For this show, Marvel Studios opted to do what writer John Byrne did with She-Hulk in the comics back in the late 1980s. They willingly and eagerly leaned into the more absurd nature of the character, creating simple plots, ridiculous characters, and over-the-top antics. They didn't try to be overly dramatic, nor did they try to create a massive spectacle. Marvel Studios just dared to have fun with the character, and letting Tatiana Maslany have fun with the role right up to She-Hulk's tendency to break the fourth wall. The end result was a wildly different kind of show for the MCU, but one that felt so refreshing and satisfying. Now, I certainly had high hopes for the show, but I was genuinely surprised Marvel Studios embraced this aspect of She-Hulk. After all the seriousness of previous shows and all the ominous hints of what lies ahead for the next several phases, She-Hulk decided to just be fun and entertaining in a wholly unique way. It certainly helps that the show didn't spend too much time complicating She-Hulk's origin. For the most part, it keeps things simple, as well as consistent with the source material. Jennifer Walters is Bruce Banner's cousin. They're on friendly terms, despite Bruce being a superhero, but that's a world Jen wants no part of. She's perfectly happy being a young, aspiring lawyer. But then, a ship from Sakaar shows up to hunt down Bruce, and Jen gets caught in the crossfire. In the process, some of Bruce's gamma-irradiated blood enters her system, which ultimately causes her to manifest her own Hulk-like form. This form is different in that she's not a howling rage monster like Bruce. But this Hulk form is a part of her now, and she has to deal with it. If this show has one underlying theme, beyond the absurdities, it's that. Becoming She-Hulk really upends Jennifer's life. She has no desire to be a superhero, an Avenger, or anything of the sort. Much like her cousin, this isn't something she chose, it just happened to her. But even though being a Hulk messes a lot of things up for her, she makes an effort to build a new life, one in which she's still Jennifer Walters' aspiring lawyer, and She-Hulk, the gamma-powered superhero woman. It's not so much a traditional superhero's journey as it is a character arc. Parts of that arc just happen to require her to be a hero and or smash certain things and people. Along the way, the show still tries to mix in some legal drama. While it's no Law and Order, She-Hulk doesn't shy away from Jen's lawyer identity. It even does a little world building, establishing how the law actually works in a world of superheroes, Asgardians, mystics, and shapeshifters. It may sound complicated, but again, the show never takes itself too seriously. And it never shies away from the quirky absurdities that make this show feel so fun. There also is an overarching season arc. However, that arc is actually secondary in this show. For the most part, She-Hulk feels more like a legal sitcom rather than a serious superhero show. Most episodes feature some sort of crazy legal issue, coupled with some issues that need a little Hulk smashing. From Wong feuding with a shady mystic, to Titania illegally copywriting She-Hulk's name, to suing an Asgardian shapeshifter for impersonating Megan Thee Stallion, these may not be world-destroying threats, but they're exactly the kinds of issues that She-Hulk is uniquely equipped to confront. And the way She-Hulk goes about it is just so lovably endearing. She gets overwhelmed at times. She also gets annoyed, frustrated, and yes, angry with Hulk levels of rage. But she never loses her sense of self or humanity through all these upheavals. Nor does she fall into familiar traps and tropes. The show largely revolves around her navigating this new life she has to live now that she's a Hulk. And we, the audience, are just along for the ride. And a big part of what makes that ride so compelling, especially from a viewer's experience, is the way the show goes about breaking the fourth wall. Now this, in my opinion, was the riskiest gambit of the show. Because since WandaVision, the MCU has had a tendency to be a bit too self-referential at times. There are instances when it feels like the writers and actors know the MCU is this strange, unprecedented media product. As a result, there has been a fair bit of lampshading going on since Avengers Endgame. But by overtly and repeatedly breaking the fourth wall throughout the show, She-Hulk doesn't bother being subtle. It actually talks to the audience, acknowledging that this is a TV show. This manifestation of the MCU is different than what we're used to, and Jennifer Walters is fully aware of that. But she's happy to share the experience with us. While that might be jarring for those expecting the typical MCU formula, it's also 100% in keeping with the She-Hulk from the comics. Like I said earlier, this show drew heavily from the John Byrne era of She-Hulk comics from the late 80s. Most fans of Marvel and She-Hulk agree, that was She-Hulk's most defining era. Her style, her personality, and even the absurd nature of her stories, it was all born from those comics. They really went a long way towards setting She-Hulk apart from her cousin. Instead of teaming up with the Avengers or fighting alongside her cousin, she just navigated this strange part of the Marvel Universe, fighting weird, over-the-top villains while still trying to be a capable lawyer. And yes, she broke the fourth wall in those comics too. A lot. Seriously, just go back and check out some of those old comics. She frequently talked to the reader directly, even talking to John Byrne outright within the pages. She played fast and loose with the meta nature of her stories years before Deadpool came into the picture. In fact, it's not unreasonable to say that She-Hulk laid the foundation for meta-aware characters like Deadpool. And in choosing this approach for the show, She-Hulk feels more engaging and entertaining as a whole. You don't have to closely watch each episode, trying to follow along, worried that you might miss a key detail. Almost every episode functions very well on its own. You can just watch the Titania episode and not be lost. You can just watch the Daredevil episode and enjoy the inherent charm of Charlie Cox. It's a show where the stakes never feel too high, and you can enjoy each episode on its own merit. And given how serious and dramatic the MCU has been in recent years, that's genuinely refreshing. That said, there are still some overarching plots that play out over the course of the season. She-Hulk does have to confront a major antagonist in the form of the Intelligentsia, a shady group of angry dude bros and trolls looking to ruin She-Hulk's life. Some think that's the show being a bit too political, creating a villain out of the same trolls who have been whining incessantly about Brie Larson since 2019. But again, it's also very much in keeping with the meta nature of She-Hulk. And the finer details of that plot help factor into how She-Hulk finds herself in a better place in the finale, which, in my opinion, was one of the best finales of any Marvel show to date. But how the show ends isn't the main reason why I enjoyed it so much. She-Hulk at her core is a very self-aware character. She knows who she is and how she's perceived. She's not the kind of character who follows a generic superhero storyline. Sure, she'll team up with the Avengers and smash monsters when they need smashing. But she goes about it her way and no one else's. She can be sweet, sassy, and friendly, but she can also be angry, irate, and annoyed. She's someone who navigates much more emotional complexity than her rage-fueled cousin. And in the grand scheme of things, that's exactly what makes Jennifer Walters a better Hulk. She really is exactly what the MCU needed, and she's exactly what the superhero genre needed as a whole. She doesn't just smash the fourth wall. She-Hulk really smashed my expectations for the show as only she can, and for that, I am grateful. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, take care and stay safe.